Hello and welcome to Part of the Integration, Top 3 Ways to Protect Your Data this Cybersecurity Awareness Month, a podcast where we discuss trends in the channel today. I'm your host, Kenneth Johnson from the Channel Company. My guest today is Rob Callaghan, Senior Product Marketing Manager with Wasabi Technologies. Rob, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
We will be talking about the rise of cyber attacks and the best way to protect your data with Wasabi. The way our program works is we have 3 topics to discuss, and we have 3 minutes to talk about each. Today, we'll discuss multi-factor authentication, object lock, and multi-user authentication. So let's get started. How does multi-factor authentication, also known as MFA, add a second layer of defense?
Ken, a great question. Multi-factor authentication is part of what we like to call defense in depth. And we'll talk about it in this whole session. You have multi-factor authentication, you have immutability through S3 object lock, and you finally have multi-user authentication. But multi-factor authentication is sort of the first pillar of this. And it talks about the fact that when you are going to access something sensitive, it requires 2 forms of authentication. First, your login and password, but also a second out-of-band kind of authentication. Easiest way to think about that is if you, let's say, log into your bank and they send you a text message with a number that you have to stick in so they know that you have control of your phone, or you use something like an RSA dongle or a authenticator to give you a secondary code. And what that does is it prevents if a cyber attack is going to happen or a bad actor is actually trying to compromise your account, they have to have access to both. And that reduces the chances that they can log in with that.
Now, what are the benefits of enabling MFA?
MFA provides a, what you would call sort of like a defense in depth part that we talked about, 2 layers of identification to get into sensitive systems. First, your login, but then also a code that has to be used to prove that it's you. And it prevents the casual person from accidentally logging in or doing it on purpose to get access to your sensitive information.
Now, Wasabi has supported MFA for years. How can MFA help MSPs who are managing multi-storage accounts?
When you leverage MFA across an MSP across their accounts and the customers that use that, they have audit trails. So they can actually see who's logging in because of the requests for those keys and that secondary line of authentication. So it's a great way to have an audit log to see who's logged in and when.
That brings us to segment 2, object lock. What is object lock and how is it safer to protect your data?
When you're using object storage, the S3 protocol has a thing called object lock. And what object lock is a way to allow you to create a mutable backups. That means they cannot be changed, immutable storage. With object lock, you can set a time and a amount of time for a certain file or an object to be locked down. While it's locked down, it cannot be erased, it can't be deleted, it can't be modified, it can't be encrypted. Some of the things that hackers will use to try to get at you and get at your data is to be able to go and delete your backups first and then go after your primary and then extort money from you. But if they can't encrypt or delete your backups, it protects you further.
Now, why should you leverage object lock for immutable backups?
And it's interesting on that when you ask that question because the immutability comes from the object lock and it's a smart way to further protect your data. What you don't want to happen is to have someone, let's say a disgruntled employee who's leaving and saying, I'm going to delete all their backups, or I'm going to delete some key files, or someone who wants to do something nefarious and basically goes in and wants to change something. By always keeping them immutable, you know that what you put in there is what's in there when you want to get access to it, and it's not going to be changed, modified, or deleted.
And how does object lock work against ransomware? Because
ransomware typically wants to start with your farthest copies, which would be your backups or your copies of backups, and work their way down to your primary and then try to extort money from you by stopping them at that top layer of your backups, making it immutable so that they cannot, in fact, delete it or modify it or encrypt it. It does 2 things. 1, it prevents them from fully compromising your system. And 2, it might even cause them to go look elsewhere because they know they cannot extort you because you have a copy that's protected.
That brings us to segment 3, multi-user authentication. What is multi-user authentication, also known as MUA?
Great question. It's a unique feature that Wasabi has, sort of a game changer in my mind, is that if they can't, the cyber criminals can't get to your immutable backups and they can't bypass your multi-factor authentication, they want to get access to your storage. And what they will do is delete the actual account. And by deleting the account, anything that's in that account, including your immutable backups, can go away. What Wasabi has done with this feature is allow you to designate 2 or 3 other security people within your company, and they all have to agree to allow an account to be deleted. What that does is it's sort of like a super MFA on steroids kind of thing that allows, prevents a cyber attack or a cyber attacker from going after the account itself, and further protects you, bringing you sort of a defense in depth across all 3 factors. So it's sort of ironclad protection.
As the cybersecurity landscape continues to evolve, why is it important to adapt MUA?
Because it's sort of this, I call it is this TikTok kind of effect. For everything that we create to help prevent a cyber attack, cyber attackers are creative too. They come up with a new way to get around it. And so with MUA, for example, is the latest thing that we've come up with to help circumvent the next plane of attack, the next direction they're going, which is actually the account itself. And so you always have to be vigilant. You always have to realize that you can't stay steady. You have to continue to advance your cybersecurity protection methods. And MUA is one of the ways we do it.
Now, Wasabi is the only cloud storage provider to offer this unique security feature. Why is MUA a game changer when it comes to security?
Because it provides a layer of protection that our competition doesn't have. It gives companies security in knowing that even if someone compromised credentials, compromised the actual access to the files, they can't, first of all, delete them because they're immutable. But if they go after the account itself because they somehow compromised credentials, they can't take a single account and use that as their weapon to basically extort the company.
Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we go, I'd like to list my top 3 takeaways. MFA adds a second layer of verification on top of your password. Your data is secure on-site and available at a moment's notice with Wasabi Object Lock. And finally, with MUA, no individual possesses the sole authority to delete an account. That concludes part of the integration, top 3 ways to protect your data this Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'm Kenna Johnson. See you next time.